Picture this, you're out for a morning walk, the sun's just peeking over the horizon, and you're feeling good, until that familiar ache creeps into your heels, or maybe your toes start complaining. Sound familiar? If you're over 60, chances are your feet have been through a lot, years of carrying you through life's adventures, from chasing kids around the house to dancing at weddings. But here's the thing, sometimes, without even realizing it, we pick up little habits that make things harder on our feet than they need to be. And trust me, those habits can sneak up on you, turning small discomforts into bigger problems like infections or pain that just won't quit. Today, we're going to talk about 6 everyday habits that might be quietly sabotaging your foot health. And don't worry, I'm not here to lecture you. Think of this as a friendly chat over coffee, where I'll share some simple fixes you can start using right away to keep your feet feeling strong and ready for whatever you've got planned. Because at this stage of life, you deserve to move with ease, whether it's a stroll through the park or just kicking back with your grandkids. So, grab a comfy seat, maybe prop those feet up for a minute, and let's get started on turning things around, one step at a time. Now, the first habit I want to bring up is something so many of us do without a second thought: wearing old, worn-out shoes. I get it, those sneakers or slippers you've had forever feel like old friends. They're broken in, they fit just right, and maybe they even remind you of good times. But here's the catch: over time, the cushioning inside those shoes flattens out, and the support they once gave your arches, it's long gone. I was talking to my neighbor Joan the other day. She's 68 and loves her garden, and she swore her favorite pair of loafers were fine because they still looked decent on the outside. Then she started noticing her knees aching after a day of pottering around, and her heels felt sore by dinner time. Turns out, those trusty shoes weren't holding up her feet anymore, they were letting her down, literally. The fix here is simpler than you might think. Next time you're slipping on your go-to pair, take a quick look inside. If the insole's flat as a pancake or you can feel every pebble through the sole, it's time to let them go. You don't have to splurge on fancy orthopedic shoes, though those can be great if you're up for it. Just head to a store with a good return policy, try on a pair with decent arch support and a little bounce in the cushioning, and walk around the house for a day. Your feet will thank you, and you might be surprised how much lighter you feel. Joan swapped hers out for a pair with a soft insole, and she's back to tending her roses without that nagging pain. It's a small change, but it's one of those things that can keep you moving without trouble creeping in. Speaking of trouble, let's move on to another habit that's all too easy to fall into: ignoring those little cracks or dry spots on your feet. I know, out of sight, out of mind, right? When's the last time you really took a good look at your heels or the sides of your toes? For a lot of us, it's not until something starts hurting or looking red that we pay attention. But here's why this matters more now than it did when we were younger. As we age, our skin gets thinner and drier, especially on our feet, where it's already working overtime. Those tiny cracks you barely notice? They're like open doors for bacteria, and before you know it, you're dealing with an infection that's no picnic to clear up. I remember my Uncle Ray. He's 72 and still insists on fixing every squeaky door in the family's houses. He used to shrug off the rough patches on his heels, figuring they'd sort themselves out. Then one summer, he ended up with a nasty infection that had him hobbling around for weeks, all because he didn't take 5 minutes to deal with the dryness. The good news is, you can dodge that drama with something you probably already have at home. Grab some petroleum jelly or a thick moisturizer, nothing fancy, just something that locks in moisture, and rub it into your heels and toes every night before bed. Pop on a pair of cotton socks to seal the deal, and you'll wake up with softer feet that aren't begging for trouble. It's not about vanity, it's about keeping those little cracks from turning into big headaches. And while we're on the topic of what we overlook, let's talk about something else we tend to brush off: cutting our toenails the wrong way. I can almost hear you laughing. Really, toenails? But stick with me here, because this one's sneakier than it sounds. If you're trimming them too short or rounding off the edges instead of cutting straight across, you're setting yourself up for ingrown nails. And let me tell you, those are no joke. They can get sore, swollen, and even infected if they dig into the skin. I learned this the hard way myself a while back. I was rushing to get ready for a family picnic, snipped my nails quick and curved, and a week later, my big toe was throbbing like I'd dropped a brick on it. The trick is to keep it simple. Use a good pair of clippers, not scissors, they're too flimsy, and cut straight across the top, leaving a little length so the nail doesn't grow into the skin. File the edges lightly if they're sharp, and do it after a shower when the nails are softer. It takes 2 minutes, tops, and it's one less thing to slow you down. My friend Clara, who's 65 and still line dances every Saturday, swears by this. She hasn't had a sore toe in years. So, now that we've got a handle on worn-out shoes, dry cracks, and tricky toenails, let's keep this going and explore a few more habits that might be holding your feet back. Because there's more to uncover that'll keep you stepping strong. So, here we are, chatting about how to give your feet the care they deserve, and I'm glad you're sticking with me because we're just getting to the good stuff. We've already talked about how those comfy old shoes might not be doing you any favors, how ignoring those dry cracks can turn into a real mess, and why a little tweak to your toenail routine can save you a lot of grief. Now, let's keep this conversation rolling and dig into another habit that's so easy to slip into, especially when you're busy enjoying life, walking around barefoot too much. I know, it feels freeing, kicking off your shoes after a long day, letting your toes wiggle on the cool floor. Maybe you're padding around the kitchen making tea or chasing after a grandkid who's dropped their toy under the couch. But here's the thing, going barefoot all the time, especially on hard surfaces like tile or wood, can start wearing your feet down in ways you don't notice until it's too late. Think about it, your feet are like the foundation of a house. When you were younger, they could handle a little rough treatment, but now, they need a bit more support to keep everything steady. I was over at my friend Tom's place last month. He's 67 and loves tinkering in his garage. He used to go barefoot out there all the time, figuring it was no big deal. Then he started feeling this dull ache in his arches, and his knees weren't too happy either. Turns out, without any cushioning underfoot, every step was jarring those joints and flattening out his natural arch. The fix doesn't mean you have to live in stiff shoes all day. Trust me, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Just slip on a pair of soft house slippers with a little padding, the kind with a flexible sole that hugs your foot. They're not expensive, and you can find them at most stores. Tom picked up a pair with a memory foam insole, and he says it's like walking on clouds now. It's a small swap that keeps your feet from taking a beating, so you can keep doing what you love without that nagging soreness creeping in. And while we're talking about what's under your feet, let's shift gears a bit and think about something else we don't always notice, wearing socks that are too tight, or worse, not wearing any at all with your shoes. This one's personal for me because I used to be guilty of it. I'd grab whatever socks were in the drawer, usually those thin ones that barely stretch, and shove my feet into my sneakers without a second thought. Or sometimes, if I was just running out to the mailbox, I'd skip socks altogether. Big mistake. Tight socks squeeze your toes together, cutting off circulation, and that can leave your feet feeling cold or tingly, especially if you're already dealing with something like neuropathy, which a lot of us face as we get older. And going sockless? That's a recipe for blisters and sweaty feet that invite all kinds of trouble, like fungal infections. I learned this lesson after a day of errands left my feet red and irritated. Turns out those tight socks were the culprit. Now, I make it a habit to wear socks that fit just right, not too snug, with a little cushioning around the heel and toes. Look for ones made of cotton or a breathable blend, nothing too fancy, just something that lets your feet breathe. If you're popping on shoes for a quick trip, toss on a pair of those low-cut ankle socks instead of going bare. My sister-in-law, Linda, who's 70 and still volunteers at the library twice a week, started doing this after I nagged her about it. She laughed at me at first, but now she swears her feet feel less tired by the end of the day. It's one of those little tweaks that doesn't feel like much until you realize how much better you feel, and it's an easy way to keep infections or soreness from sneaking up on you. Now, let's talk about something we all do sometimes, especially when we're tired or in a rush, sitting too long with our feet dangling or tucked under us. I get it. After a busy morning, there's nothing like sinking into your favorite chair, maybe with a cup of coffee or a good book. But if you're perched on a stool where your feet don't quite touch the ground, or you've got them curled up under you on the couch, you're cutting off the blood flow without even realizing it. I used to do this all the time while watching TV, legs tucked up, cozy as can be, until I noticed my feet would feel stiff and numb when I finally stood up. Over time, that can make swelling worse or even strain the muscles in your feet and calves. The good news is, you don't have to give up your comfy spot, just adjust a little. If your feet don't reach the floor, slide a small stool or even a stack of old magazines underneath so they're resting flat. If you love curling up, try stretching your legs out instead, maybe with a pillow under your knees for support. My buddy George, who's 64 and still plays cards with his buddies every Friday, started doing this after his doctor mentioned his puffy ankles might be from sitting too long. He rigged up a little footrest from an old box, and he says it's made a world of difference, no more stiffness when he gets up to shuffle the deck. It's all about keeping that circulation going, so your feet stay happy and ready for whatever's next. And speaking of what's next, there's one more habit we've got to tackle to round this out, something that ties all these little fixes together into a bigger picture for feeling your best. Alright, we've been having this cozy little chat about how to treat our feet right, and I hope you're feeling inspired to make a few small changes, because that's all it takes sometimes to keep moving with a spring in your step. We've covered how barefoot strolls on hard floors can wear you down, how tight socks or skipping them altogether can stir up trouble, and how sitting with your feet dangling or tucked can leave them stiff and swollen. Now, let's wrap this up with one last habit that ties everything together, neglecting to give your feet a little rest and TLC at the end of the day. I know, life gets busy, maybe you're cooking dinner for the family, helping a grandkid with homework, or just winding down with a show. Before you know it, bedtime rolls around, and your feet? They've been on duty all day without a break. This one hit home for me when I started noticing how tired my feet felt after a day of puttering around the house. I'd kick off my shoes, plop down, and call it good, but they were still aching, almost like they were begging for a little attention. And here's why this matters. As we get older, our feet don't bounce back as fast as they used to. All those steps, all that standing, it adds up, and if you don't give them a moment to recover, you're more likely to wake up with stiffness, soreness, or even those pesky infections we've been talking about. I saw this with my cousin Marie. She's 69 and still runs a little craft group every week. She used to push through long days without a pause, and her feet started swelling up so much she could barely get her shoes on. It wasn't until she slowed down for a simple fix that things turned around. So, what's the trick? It's easier than you might think, and it feels downright luxurious. At the end of your day, say, after dinner or while you're watching the evening news, fill a basin with warm water, maybe toss in a handful of Epsom salt if you've got it, and let your feet soak for 10 or 15 minutes. The warmth loosens everything up, gets the blood flowing, and washes away any sweat or grime that could cause trouble. After that, pat them dry and rub in a bit of lotion. Doesn't have to be anything special, just something to keep the skin soft. Marie started doing this, and she told me it's like a reset button. Her feet feel lighter, and she's not hobbling around in the morning anymore. It's a small ritual, but it's one that says, "Hey, feet, you've done great today. Here's a little thank you." And honestly, don't we all deserve that kind of care? Now, as we've been chatting about these 6 habits, worn out shoes, ignoring cracks, sloppy toenail cuts, too much barefoot time, tight socks, awkward sitting, and skipping that evening rest, I hope you've picked up a thread that runs through it all. It's not about overhauling your whole routine or spending a fortune. It's about noticing the little things, those everyday choices that seem harmless but can quietly chip away at how good you feel. Maybe you're like my neighbor Joan, who swapped her flattened sneakers and started walking taller, or my Uncle Ray, who dodged an infection with a dab of moisturizer. These aren't big, dramatic fixes. They're practical, down-to-earth steps you can weave into your day without missing a beat. And here's the best part. When you start breaking these habits, you're not just dodging pain or problems, you're setting yourself up to enjoy the things that matter most. A pain-free walk with a friend, a dance with your partner, or just the freedom to chase after whatever brings you joy. I think about Clara, who's still line dancing at 65 because she keeps her toes in check, or George, shuffling cards with his buddies thanks to a simple footrest. These little tweaks add up, and they're proof that taking care of yourself doesn't have to be hard. It can even feel good while you're doing it. So, I'd love to hear from you. What's one habit you've noticed sneaking into your routine? Maybe you've already tried a fix that worked wonders. Drop it in the comments below. I'm all ears, and I bet the rest of us could use the inspiration too. If this chat's given you something to think about, give the video a thumbs up. It helps more folks like us find it. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button so we can keep talking about ways to feel our best at every age. Because here's the truth, you've earned the right to feel strong and steady, and with a few small shifts, your feet can carry you there. So, here's to happy feet and happy days. Cheers to you, today and always.